society that history's ever created. I'm not committed to nonviolence in any way.
Man or woman who hates communism the most, that is to say, the man or woman who knows the least about communism, is the man or woman who wants to know the least about communism. That is to say, snakes are my enemies. They come to bite me, and I don't even want to know what they look like.
We're going to see about stopping, regardless of what these people think we should do. Because school is not important, and work is not important. Nothing's more important than stopping fascism, because fascism will stop us all.
Yo. Welcome to the Forest Podcast. This is Comrade Villain, and I'm here with
Pretty Bad Comrade,
the other comrade in the building. Let me turn your shit up a little bit.
Turn me up.
We back. We're trying to record more often. After the last episode on the Global South, I mean, I already kind of had this plan, but today we're going to be talking about, I don't know, I guess the roots of communism being actually seen through as a state, and which is the USSR and the Russian Revolution and the importance of it, and just framing history in that context. But before we get into that real quick, anything you want to talk about what's going on in the news? Any Venezuela updates or anything?
I don't think I've heard anything new as far as Venezuela goes. There's still a lot of posturing from the United States military. So I don't think there's any real new developments. I think did they hit another boat? Was it?
Yes, and I saw there's some Democratic lawmaker, Representative Sarah Jacobs. I'm not sure where she's from, but she was trying to get some more information about those strikes on the drug boats, and she was told in a Pentagon briefing, quote, "They do not need to positively identify individuals on the vessel to do the strikes." And then she says that was part of the reason why the administration has not sought to detain or prosecute the survivors of these strikes, quote, because they could not satisfy the evidentiary burden, unquote. So we just talked about that one boat that they hit and there were survivors, and we kind of just gave them back to their countries. We did that because I guess there wasn't enough evidence to try those people as actually smuggling drugs, narco-terrorists, whatever we want to call them. So yeah, that's even crazier than what we had already thought.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is obviously just like, I don't want to just say posturing, but this is like us sending a message, and I don't know, I guess trying to provoke something. So that's cool. We don't need to know who's on those boats. Fuck it. We're pretty sure what's on the boat, so we can kill them. And then I did see Russia. This was on Halloween. Let's see. Russia appears to warn U.S. over pressure against Venezuela. We stand ready to respond appropriately. This is from the Latin Times. We support the leadership of Venezuela in defending its national sovereignty, said press official Maria Zakharova. I think that's how you would say that. So yeah, that's from Moscow, saying they're ready to respond appropriately to the requests of our partners in light of emerging threats. Partner meaning Venezuela. We support the leadership of Venezuela in defending its national sovereignty, taking into account the dynamics of the international and regional situation. That's like the most political speak I've ever heard, but that was from press official Maria Zakharova. So I don't know. I guess Russia is at least saying, hey, don't forget about us over here.
Right.
We will do something if you decide to do this. I'm interested. I wonder what their stance is on this.
I mean, it's probably something similar. I mean, I'm pretty sure China and Venezuela recently upgraded their, I don't know what you would call it, like a strategic partnership, maybe.
Okay.
And I know Russia and Venezuela have, good relations. I think Russia provides some arms to the Venezuelan military. I think maybe some like air defense systems.
Do they trade with them for oil? Like, are they?
No, not really. I mean,
No,
remember,
Russia has a lot of oil.
Yeah, they're major. Now, China has been buying some oil from Venezuela, I believe.
Okay.
As well. So, obviously, yeah, as we mentioned, I think before, it's like Venezuela is also, the U.S. going after Venezuela in particular is also about China. Of course, it's a reassertion of the Monroe Doctrine that every country.
Which is what now?
The Monroe Doctrine was established by James Monroe, the former president in
James Earl Monroe.
Is it really James Earl?
I don't know. For some reason, I think so. I said that pretty confidently.
It flowed well. It sounded right.
Yeah.
But yeah, in 1823, I believe, basically it just asserted that it was a proclamation that every country in the Western Hemisphere was, in our domain more or less, and we had the right to, do as we will. And this is like after the War of 1812, where, we finally came, or the British Empire finally came to terms that, all right, we're kind of like back off, basically. Like, we let you guys, we didn't let you guys, but, after 1776.
You had your revolution, yeah.
You had your revolution. And then I think and then we tried to take Canada, I think, which is what led to the 1812. Like, I think we actually went into Canada. I think that's what actually sparked the 1812 war. I have to fact check me on that. But anyway, long story short,
the French ended up getting Canada.
Yeah. Well, the French ended up helping us because, Napoleon didn't like the British.
Actually, no, didn't the Brits get it? Because they are still like loyal to the Queen, aren't they?
Who?
Canada.
I don't know if they're still.
Maybe not anymore, but
I don't know if they're still considered in the.
I know there's like
Commonwealth
pockets of French people that only speak French in
Yeah,
Canada.
that's in Quebec, I believe,
Yeah.
in that province. But it was also, it was a French. The French had a piece of it as well, and I know the French didn't like Britain at the time.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, Napoleon hated.
I mean, they also had like a. When was Louisiana purchased? Pretty sure after that, right? So they had a large part of America too.
Yeah.
So it was actually interesting. Real quick, what do you think James Monroe's middle name is?
You said Earl. Earl sounded.
James Monroe did not have a middle name.
Oh wow!
What the fuck?
Where'd you get Earl from?
I don't know. It just sounded right. But this was common for people born in colonial America, where middle names were not widely used. I didn't understand. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson,
none
Andrew
of them had
Jackson
middle names.
Did not have middle names.
Wow. So wait, when did middle names become a thing?
I don't know. Fuck it. All right, talk for a second. I'll find out.
Yeah, but just going back to after, it became clear that the U.S. was not going to fall back under the control of the Brits, so that we were going to do our own thing. James Monroe was like, all right, basically, the Brits have their empire, the French have their empire, the Western Hemisphere, that's going to be our domain, basically. And that's been the Monroe Doctrine ever since.
Okay, gotcha. Just real quick, the turn of the 19th century. Wait. Yeah, after the Civil War. And then it became customary by the 1900s. So 1800, 1900. Yeah.
Never knew that.
Me neither. So yeah, Monroe Doctrine.
Yeah, so what I was saying got a little off track, but basically this, not only is this a going after Venezuela, sort of a reassertion of the Monroe Doctrine, like to say, hey, Latin America is our backyard, is a term that they like to use for whatever reason. And, we're going to make sure, as the American empire begins to decline and have trouble, that we can reassert our dominance in the hemisphere. And also cut China off from having access to resources and
South America in general.
Yeah. There's a lot of these countries have are part of the Belt and Road Initiative already. Peru,
where I was going to bring that up,
has a large port. So yeah, it's about getting control of the region again, basically.
So yeah, and I saw something else. There was some kind of graphic that had like all of the different military, I don't want to say vehicles, but whatever, all the military. We have warships. We got Nighthawk helicopters. We got a lot of shit built up right now, really close to Venezuela.
Right.
So it's looking not great. But we should really do a deep dive into that, and I definitely want to do a deep dive into Venezuela in general.
No doubt.
There's a section of the PSL website that talks about Venezuela. I'm probably gonna use that at some point. But
For sure.
all right. So real quick, I do have one thing I want to do, like a little segment. But before I do that, I have a clip I want to play for you from your favorite ex-president. And I'm sure you know exactly who that is. But let's hear this.
Better
real
not
quick.
be Obama.
I mean, they've devoted enormous energy in trying to entrench themselves in power and punishing their enemies and enriching their friends and silencing their critics. They put on a big show of deporting people and targeting transgender folks. They never miss a chance to scapegoat minorities and DEI for every problem under the sun. You got a flat tire? DEI. Huh. Wife mad at you? DEI. What they have not devoted energy to is helping you. They have not put forward serious proposals to lower housing costs or make groceries more affordable. They haven't improved our schools. They haven't made healthcare more accessible. They haven't shortened your commute or prepared young people for the future where AI might take their job.
So, there's Obama doing his tight 5 minutes, trying to get a little Riyadh, Saudi Arabia stand-up comedy money. It seems like he's out here doing his routine. That was for Abigail Spanberger.
A CIA spook.
Okay, what do you know about her? Because
That's it. That's
what
all
you know.
I need to know, and I don't need to know nothing else.
Do you know what she's running for? What he's
Yes, the Senate, I think.
governor?
Oh, she running for governor? Oh, was she already a senator? Or was she? I thought she was in the House. I can't remember.
Damn, she is a spook. She was a former law enforcement officer, CIA officer,
Yeah.
congresswoman. Shit, I should know this. Regardless, why do you think this Virginia race is important? Why Virginia? Why her? There's nothing special about her, is there? Like, I've never heard of her before.
Nah, I mean, I've heard of her, but it's just Virginia is one of those purplish states.
Okay.
She's like considered a moderate or a centrist.
Okay.
And, this is just Democrats trying to, after the last election with Kamala losing and everything, the talk about the party being too woke and all this, which was coming from a bunch of, moderates and centrist corporate Dems. This is their attempt to be like, okay, we can kind of get back on track here. Let's get Obama out here. Trump is unpopular with the shutdown. Let's see if we can sort of pivot here.
Look, maybe the problem was Kamala was a black woman. We got a white woman now. Maybe we'll pump her up.
Yeah, I mean they're really trying to keep this. They know, and I think deep down, some of them anyway, that people like Zoran Mum Donnie are increasingly popular, and they want to believe that people like Spanberger can still win, and if she does win, they'll look and they'll point to this and say, "Look, this is the way. All right, we can still win these purplish states by supporting good, moderate Democrats. We don't have to go all Zoran Mamdani or populist or leftist or socialist or all that. We can do this still in this way." So I think this is why it's important.
Right. We can still try to front run candidates that maybe could win some, I don't know, iffy Republicans over because they're still thinking that way. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was your favorite president, so we had to do that real quick.
Can't stand him.
I do want to. All right. I'm gonna do this little game real quick. So I'm a big Ringer podcast listener, and Bill Simmons got something called Guess the Lines because they're degenerate gamblers and they guess what the line is gonna be, and they're actually pretty fucking good at it. But I got some. This game is called Guess the Lines headlines. That is. So I'm gonna give you 4 different headlines, and you have to tell me which one is not real. All right.
All right.
Here we go. Number 1, truck hauling aggressive monkeys carrying herpes and COVID overturns in Mississippi. Number 2, people knowingly donated $100,000 to dig a big pointless hole in the ground. Number 3, why the White House is behind a rare Supreme Court push to limit gun ownership. And number 4, Lay's drastically rebrands after disturbing finding 42% of consumers didn't know their chips were made out of potatoes. So which one of those is a lie?
Just one of those is a lie.
I know, right?
Gosh. I'm gonna go with the Lay's one.
You think the Lay's one is a lie?
Yep.
That's a good guess. That's a good guess, but they're all true. This country is so fucking stupid. All right. And actually, the first one has a fucking second article or headline that's crazy as fuck because it happened a couple of days later. I planned this for the last episode, but here we go. Truck hauling aggressive monkeys carrying herpes and COVID overturns in Mississippi.
That's wild.
That happened in Jasper County, Mississippi, October 28th. When is this? What's the fucking date of this shit? October 29th. This headline from NBC: escape monkeys destroyed after Mississippi police are mistakenly told they're a danger.
What? Yeah.
So it turns out they did not have herpes or COVID or anything. For some reason, that's what the fucking driver of the truck told the local cops.
What? Yo.
And then the cops were just like, "Oh shit, I believe you, driver."
And what they do is like start shooting monkeys on sight.
Yeah, shot them bitches on sight. Like it was a fucking horror movie, and they carried a zombie disease because Mississippi was like, "Fuck yeah, we're stupid as fuck."
Oh god.
So that was cool. All right. Number 2, people knowingly donated $100,000 to dig a big pointless hole in the ground. This is a little bit old, but I don't know why this pops up on my feed. But this is from November 27, 2016. You heard of the game Cards Against Humanity?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so I guess they do stunts like this, and they had a fund. They were like, "Hey, donate $100,000, and we're gonna donate money, and we're gonna dig a big hole in the ground. As long as you keep donate money, we're gonna keep digging a hole in the ground and fill it back in."
Right.
It just blows my mind that was a real thing that happened.
The end.
Yeah, they did it, and yeah, $100,000. People thought it was funny.
Oh, man.
So, capitalism being the most efficient system. Here you go, baby. This is ultimate freedom.
Digging holes to
ultimate
nowhere.
freedom right here. Like just to do it. Actually, I'm gonna read this real quick. This is the head interview with NPR. I'm gonna go back and forth. You'll be able to tell. What's happening here? Cards Against Humanity is digging a holiday hole. Is it real? Unfortunately, it is. Where is the hole? America and in our hearts. Is there some sort of deeper meaning or purpose to the hole? No. What do I get for contributing money to the hole? A deeper hole. What else are you going to buy? An iPad or an iPod? Why aren't you giving all this money to charity? Why aren't you giving all this money to charity? It's your money. Is the hole bad for the environment? No. This is just a bunch of empty land. Now there's a hole. That's life. What am I supposed to feel about this? You're supposed to think it's funny. You might not get it for a while, but sometime next year you'll chuckle to yourself and remember all this business about the hole. How deep can you make this sucker? Great question. As long as you keep spending, we'll keep digging. We'll find out together how deep this thing goes. What if you dig so deep you hit hot magma? At least then we'll feel something. So it is kind of funny. I guess you could say that it was like a marketing thing.
Yeah.
But it's just, to me, it's like the highlight of fucking capitalism and how inefficient and stupid it is, and it does not use resources well. All right, why the White House is behind a rare Supreme Court push to limit gun ownership. Have you heard about this?
No.
I guess it's something about U.S. versus Ali Daniel Hamani. He was a dual U.S. Pakistani citizen charged with firearms-related felony after an FBI investigation, where he had a gun in his home and acknowledged being a regular pot user. So I guess they're trying to make it harder for weed smokers to own guns. Which, I thought this was the Second Amendment party. I thought this was the Freedom Party.
Right.
Fuck out of here. All right. And then the last one. Lay's drastically rebrands after disturbing finding 42% of consumers didn't know their chips were made out of potatoes. I don't even really know what to say about that. That's from Fortune magazine. America, get your shit together. All right, so that's done. I do want to play one clip real quick from George Lucas, like we did last episode. And I kind of actually want to play this other clip too.
Okay.
Remember the debunking every anti-communist argument ever video that I sent to you?
Yes.
I think it's about spooky socialists or some shit.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to start kind of going through those in some of our episodes. So this one, have you ever heard the argument that communism wants complete equality, which is going to lead to like a blandness or like a hive mind thing, like everyone wears the same clothes, there's no like self-expression because everyone's completely equal, and like that's what you want, communism. Fucking no classes, everybody's equal, right?
Right.
So you're not gonna have artistic expression. You heard that before?
Yeah, of course.
What would you say to that?
I mean, it's I don't know. It's bullshit. It's just a very simplistic argument. Watch Star Trek. I don't know.
Well, Star Trek is like what I thought of at first, because like they kind of all wear the same clothes or the same jumpsuits or whatever. But they also, I don't know, like we're not gonna get to Star Trek. I don't know. It's like, have you read Utopian or Socialism, Utopian and Scientific by Frederick Engels? It's like very short. It's like
Yeah, I've started it once. I
think that's the point of that book, is people arguing for utopian socialism. Mm-hmm. It's not like, I guess, possible, essentially. You have to have, scientific socialism and this like weird fantasy of complete equality. Even though communists want a classless state and want things to be more equal, we don't want... capitalists have this thing about meritocracy, and like you would hear this shit with Charlie Kirk a lot. Or this is arguing is affirmative action. We just want a meritocracy.
Yeah, and DEI, of course.
Yeah,
as Obama was just talking
out
about.
there pitching that shit. So, yeah, I mean, I just think there's this idea, essentially, capitalism equals democracy equals freedom.
Right.
Communism equals tyranny, no self-expression or anything. So I'm going to play the clip from that video, and then I'm going to play George Lucas and a clip of him and his thoughts.
This from Spooky?
Yeah, first the spooky one.
Okay.
The image that comes to most people's mind when communists or socialists talk about wanting more equality is that of a bland, boring dystopia where everyone is forced to be equal. Communism would essentially force everyone to become part of a hive mind, or at least that's how the general idea goes. However, the idea that more equality means suppressing the talented elite to the common level of the masses is just wrong. When communists say we want more equality, they mean freeing the masses so they can unleash their suppressed talents. After the October Revolution, there was a flourishing of art, culture, and creativity. The Futurist movement, legalization of divorce for women, and the growth of cinema were exciting developments compared to the Tsar's regime over the masses of people. It turns out liberating millions of people from the clutches of capital creates an exciting artistic society, not one where everyone is forced to be a hive mind and conform to some incorrect abstract idea of equality. Meanwhile, in capitalism, schools prepare students for a lifetime of work, while workers have to become mindless drones in jobs that a majority of them hate. Any sort of excitement or interest is usually reserved for the rich and powerful, while the rest of us go on with their boring lives. People worse off have to deal with the growing ecological disasters that are literally killing them and destroying their homes, while the rich profit off of ignoring any sort of sustainable solution. Maybe all this talk about a communist dystopia is really just an example of capitalism projecting itself?
So again, it's also the capitalism projecting itself thing is very interesting because we say things like that, like you're not going to be able to do what you want because you have to, I don't know, adhere to the state or something like that. You're not really going to be free. But to that note, listen to George Lucas, Star Wars director and big movie guy.
But I do like movies. I love movies. And I know a lot of movies aren't popular. And you can say that going in. One of the reasons I retired is so I could make movies that aren't popular. Because in the world we live in the system we've created for ourselves in terms of it's a big industry, you cannot lose money. So the point is that you're forced to make a particular kind of movie. And I used to say this all the time when people, back when Russia was the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. And they'd say, oh, but aren't you so glad that you're in America? I said, well, I know a lot of Russian filmmakers. They have a lot more freedom than I have. All they have to do is be careful about criticizing the government. Otherwise, they can do anything they want.
And so what do you have to do?
You have to adhere to a very narrow line of commercialism. And there's only look, when I started in the 70s, it was like this. I could say Russia was like this, but we were like this. You could do a certain kind of movie. And I flaunted that system. I mean, THX, my first film, is definitely not an American film, and I shoved it in sideways. Francis helped me trick the studio.
Yeah, right.
They would have never let me make that movie if they knew what I was doing.
So, again, actually, I know I've seen the Star Wars movies like once.
Mm-hmm.
Are you a Star Wars fan? Do you watch Star Wars movies? Do you watch the Star Wars shows? Do you know about the Star Wars world? Because I feel like I should watch it now that I have this leftist perspective, and I could probably
appreciate it more.
Appreciate it way more.
Yeah. I'm not the biggest nerd or Star Wars nerd. I did watch I watched them late.
Have you seen the newer ones? I haven't even seen like The Last Jedi and.
No, I saw a couple of them. I can't remember which ones they were.
Do you remember? I do remember like the Rebels versus the Empire.
Right.
So it does seem like anti-imperialism.
Right.
By default.
Yeah, we talked about that. So
yeah, but I mean, what he just said in Soviet Russia or probably China today, I'm not sure. You have like it's the state. Like there's one thing, one set of like, I don't know, guidelines. In America, with capitalism, you seem like you're free to do whatever you want.
Right.
But no, you're free to do whatever the movie studio allows you to do.
Right.
What their sponsors, what their funding, what their investors, what they allow you to do.
Exactly.
It's like chopped up into a million more pieces. It's home. And that example you just said, like I wouldn't have got this last movie made if I didn't have Francis Ford Coppola fucking great vouching for me, and if they knew what I was trying to do. So he almost had to like trick them. So I'm just trying to highlight that it's not more free over here. And that's like that's a big argument against communism, is that it always leads to totalitarianism. Anybody that lives under communism has no freedom of expression. There's a lot of great cinema that came out of Russia. Like I think it's the Mutiny on something. I can't remember the name of it, but like that was copied in America. The way they shot shit. I don't know. I just hate this idea that America is the creative center for the fucking world.
Absolutely.
By default.
Absolutely. And we know that, of course, the U.S. government also plays a role in some of the movies that get pushed and promoted. A lot of the Marvel movies are basically propaganda for the U.S. military industrial complex.
Specifically Captain America, but yeah.
Right. Not just Captain America. I mean, there's a whole, and I think we talked about this before, but there's a whole division that's that's dedicated to the movie industry of I don't know if it's the Defense Department,
Oh,
but they have
yes.
their, you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, because if anybody wants to do anything like Top Gun, for example, Top Gun Maverick, to use, I don't know, realistic military planes and yada, 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 the military has to sign off on it.
Right.
Which, I don't know, it's probably part of the reason, like, that movie, I haven't seen it, but I've heard the bad guys are from no country. They never identify what country it's from. Probably so they could sell it overseas, but also because the military is like, look, if you're going to use our shit, I don't want you to put us in a movie going to war with somebody. I don't know, maybe. I guess there was Red Dawn back in the day, and yeah, I don't know. We should really look into this because there's a whole Hollywood history of like Koreans and Russians and
Right.
obviously Islamic people being terrorists and the bad guy, but all that's propaganda. But yeah, all right. Probably gonna take a quick break unless you want to say anything else real quick, and then we'll do.
No, I
Soviet shit.
did want to just mention, the Mum Donnie election is coming up, so I'm just interested to see how that's going to play out. That's on Tuesday in New York. We'll see what happens there. And then also I want to give a shout out to Jamaica. Prayers, thoughts, all that.
Absolutely.
I was in Jamaica last year. Beautiful country.
Damn, that's crazy. I forgot about
And,
that.
Yep. Beautiful country, beautiful people, beautiful culture. So I've seen some of the images. Island's devastated, obviously. In fact, my cousin just sent me a message today from our tour guide. Whenever we were there, we have a group chat, like a family group chat, and I guess she still keeps in contact with the tour guide. And basically, it was just a short message he sent to her, but she forwarded it to us in our group chat.
Okay.
Just talking about how he lost his roof. The island is devastated.
Damn.
So anyway, our family's gonna just pull together some money to send to him and stuff. But yeah, just wanted to mention that. Shout out to Jamaica.
Yeah, definitely. Also Jamaica. As far as Mum Donnie, since you brought it up real quick, I did see that House Republican. This is a headline from the New York Post, which is a rag, but House Republicans exploring ways to prevent Mum Donnie from being sworn in as mayor if he wins on election day. And apparently they're looking at the 14th Amendment, which bars office to anyone who, quote, engaged in insurrection or rebellion, or who, quote, has given aid or comfort to the enemies. And the House Republicans, I guess, are arguing that Mum Donnie's own statements calling to resist ICE could violate that.
Gosh.
Hasn't he said something about Hamas in the past? Or
No,
it was just strictly for Palestine.
Yeah, I mean the globalized intifada. I don't think he even said that, but he said that he doesn't believe that language should be policed, essentially, and they were hitting him for that.
Right.
But yeah.
Just the fact that they're desperate,
Yeah.
like this desperate, that they're looking into, and I wouldn't put it past them because all they would have to do is make some bullshit argument like that, which goes to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court's in their bag. But that would be pretty wild.
Yeah, I mean the Islamophobia and the racism and bigotry around the Mum Donnie campaign from the Democrats has been insane.
Yes.
Just in case there was any if you thought the Democrats weren't racist,
Yeah.
just look at the Mum Donnie campaign, and this shouldn't come as a surprise to us because whenever Obama ran, Hillary Clinton's campaign was leaking photos of him with wearing a turban.
I remember those photos. Yep.
So, this shouldn't come as a surprise to us, but it's been very disgusting to watch. Cuomo's been posting all these weird ass. I put one in the Discord. Actually, I probably should have. That's one I should have probably had you upload.
We can pull that.
And just, I think I'm not I think they may be trying to do something. I saw Hillary Clinton was on some podcast, and they were asking her about the Mum Donnie campaign, and she was it kind of just sounded as if she thought like there's something that the Democrats still have up their sleeve. So like she was alluding to something like, we'll see what happens. She's like, whatever happens, we should just support, who wins. I don't know. Sounded very, suspect to me. And then I saw a clip also. I didn't even think about this one. I should have mentioned that to you as well. But this guy, Bill Ackman, are you familiar with him? He's like a billionaire hedge fund manager. I think he's a big supporter of Trump actually. Okay. But there's a clip of him in Saudi Arabia, sitting around, at a round table with a bunch of other wealthy white dudes, primarily talking about how he doesn't think Mum Donnie is good for New York. I mean, just the optics of that is crazy. Like you're sitting in Saudi Arabia in a literal monarchy with a bunch of other rich white dudes talking about Mum Donnie is bad for New York, the place that you're not even in right now. So yeah, I can't. It's crazy. Yeah, it is crazy.
I mean, look, and we see what they're doing with not seating what's the representative in Arizona, I think, because she's the final vote on the releasing the Epstein files, which is I
didn't hear about that.
Yeah, so she won, and I don't know, it's got to have been close to a month ago. And what's his name? Who's the Speaker of the House?
Mike Johnson.
Mike Johnson.
Yeah.
He's just like, no, we're just not going to seat her. And
Wow.
I haven't really heard any good reasons why. But I mean, the reason is because she said, I'm going to be the vote to make them release the Epstein files, which I'm fucking over it at this point. I think the Epstein files are becoming like Russiagate was for the Democrats. And they think that, I don't know. I don't understand what they think they're going to get by forcing the release of files that are going to be redacted and deleted, and I don't know what
I think they should be released, but you're right though. I mean, I don't think much is going to come from it, even if they did. Like whatever they release is not going to be, it's not going to be fully transparent. So
anyways, if they're not going to swear her in, they're going to figure out things to do with Mum Donnie. So, and then hopefully he won't break, because he's going to be getting pressure from everywhere.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, let's take a quick break real quick, and then we'll come back and we'll do this Soviet shit.
Bet.
All right. And we back. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be reading an article. This article was written by Brian Becker. The title of this article is Socialism and the Legacy of the Soviet Union. And you can find it in the 2017 book, Storming the Gates, How the Russian Revolution Changed the World. As I'm reading it, if there's something you want to say, just go ahead and say it. There's a couple spots in here that I have highlighted that I'm going to stop and say something about. But if you want to say something, go ahead. All right, so I'm going to go get to it. The single biggest event that shaped global politics for the 20th century was the Russian Revolution of 1917, which gave birth to the Soviet Union. The first socialist government's existence was the pivot for world events in history's most turbulent and dynamic century. The destruction of the Soviet Union 74 years later in 1991 has been the dominant factor shaping global politics in the nearly 17 years since. And this was 2017, so. All right. Karl Marx and Frederick Engels wrote in 1848, "A specter is haunting Europe, the specter of communism. However, haunting the specter of communism may have appeared to the European bourgeoisie in the mid-1800s, it would seem mild compared to the undiluted hysteria directed by all the imperialist powers and old ruling classes against the actually existing Soviet Union throughout the 20th century." Again, which is why the Soviet Union was just so important. It was not just the idea of communism, that was haunting Europe, it was actually put into praxis. The victory of the Russian Revolution transformed the presentation of communism from an idea and ideology into a living, breathing social and political experience. It was an attempt to consciously build a society based on the interests and needs of the working classes. Communism's new identification with state power was extremely positive for the world communist movement. The domestic programs, the radical reorganization of constitutional law, and the revolutionary foreign policy of the new Soviet state spread the appeal of communism to nearly every corner of the globe. Millions of people were drawn into political life and the communist movement as the idea of workers' power took on flesh and bones. In the colonized world, the Soviet message of self-determination and freedom drew the most advanced youth directly into newly founded communist parties from China to Vietnam to South Africa. Do you know about the communists in South Africa?
No, not a whole lot. I knew they had communists there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Neither do I. That's interesting. The banner of Soviet communism became synonymous not just with socialism, but the aspirations for national independence. As the influence of communism spread throughout the 20th century to all corners of the world, every capitalist power brought to bear the weight of its media, politicians, universities, and especially armies in a global struggle to counter Soviet influence. The identification of communism with a state power expanded later into its political association with the governments in Eastern Europe, China, North Korea, Vietnam, and Cuba, along with newly founded revolutionary governments in Africa that were also trying to take a socialist road. Communism became inseparably connected to what was known as the Soviet or the socialist bloc governments. As the first, largest, and most powerful socialist power, the Soviet Union was identified as the anchor of this global camp. Do you know who was in the socialist bloc governments?
Like who is
Like
it?
which countries?
Oh, like that made it, these are countries that weren't in the actual USSR.
No, this was
Like East Germany, East Germany, the GDR.
Eastern Bloc. It's mostly Eastern Bloc countries.
Yeah.
But so we got Soviet Union, of course, Poland. I didn't know Poland went communist like that. East Germany, of course, because they had the split. Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, China, North Korea, Vietnam, Mongolia, Laos, Albania, Cuba, South Yemen, Ethiopia, Angola, Mozambique, and Afghanistan. Any of those countries surprise you?
No, not really. I mean, I don't know enough about what was going on there to be surprised. I mean, I know a lot of the Eastern Bloc countries, like Eastern European countries, that this was due to obviously the Red Army defeating Hitler and having influence over those countries after that. And then outside of that, I mean, I just know like countries like Vietnam and Laos, Lao, however you say it, they went, obviously Cuba, they went socialist.
Typically the socialist bloc countries were Marxist-Leninist one-party systems, which aligned with how the USSR ran things. So.
Right. And then countries like Mozambique and Angola, those were former colonies under Portugal, and the USSR provided a lot of material support for them in their fights for independence. Doesn't surprise me.
Gotcha. All right. Moving on. Politics, ideology, and state power. Conflating the historical ideology and perspective of communism with a government or a block of governments also created a tremendous disadvantage. In spite of the material advantages that came from possessing state power, every setback, weakness, retreat, defect, and deformation suffered by the Soviet Union was also identified as an inherent negative feature of communism. Of course, anything that goes wrong, well, that's because you're communist. That the socialist revolutions took place in poor countries instead of the rich imperialist countries gave the capitalist propaganda machine ready-made ammunition to argue against socialism. And they mentioned that today in the class on China. These socialist revolutions took place in poor countries. Like they were trying to provide for everyone in a classless society without being industrialized and already having the means to do it. So something to be taken into consideration.
Right.
Anti-communist literature could point to the relative affluence of the imperialist countries and assert socialism or communism is nothing but the equality of poverty for the people, while officials and bureaucrats enjoy privileges based on their association with the ruling Communist Party. This same anti-communist propaganda, spoon-fed to the people of the United States, obscured and falsified every real social and economic achievement made by the Soviet Union, China, or Cuba. Nowhere is it mentioned that every Soviet worker had a legal right to a job, free health care, and free child care. Rent was a small fraction of income. Every worker was guaranteed a month of paid vacation. So yeah, they just, anything that goes wrong, it's because your economy and your government is communist. Anything that, I don't know, is awesome, like having a legal right to a job or health care, child care, low rent, just ignore all of that shit. But I wanted to dig into that a little bit more because I did, as far as like the legal rights to work and what was it like to live in that era under the USSR and have a legal right to work, and essentially who was considered a Soviet that had that right. So anyways, anybody that was employed, anybody that lived in one of these Soviet states had the right to have a job. It was in their constitution of the USSR, which is also called Stalin's constitution. Citizens have the right to work, that is, the right to guaranteed employment and payment for the work in accordance with its quantity and quality. It doesn't mean everyone gets paid the same. It doesn't mean everything's equal. It means everyone has the right to go and work. Was there always enough jobs? Something I thought. If not, then what happened? Typically, what would happen is what's called liquidation or redundancies. If, I don't know, there was an industry that, I don't want to say failed, or just there's no need for it anymore, those people that work in that industry had a right to be retrained into learning how to do a new job. So I don't know, it's that on top of the right to the healthcare, the right to, I don't know, all these other things that we don't have that just gets overlooked. But yes, essentially you always had a job in the Soviet Union if you wanted to work one. But continuing on. These social rights were maligned or hidden in the West. In every instance, the propaganda emphasized that the capitalist United States was rich and affluent, with ordinary workers having access to all sorts of goods and services that were not accessible in the Soviet Union. We got like 20 types of cheeses, so we're better. When the Soviet Union was overthrown in 1991, capitalist propaganda highlighted one theme. The collapse of the Soviet Union meant that communism itself was dead. The dream of the poor and the working people was vanquished forever. The end of history, quote unquote, was the theme of a bestseller in 1992, written by academic Francis Fukuyama. You ever heard of that guy?
Yes.
What do you know about him?
I know he wrote that book. that's what he's famous for. That's
Gotcha.
yeah.
The essence of this argument was that capitalism, the rule of class by billionaires of and over society, is the natural order of things. Sorry, yeah, it's a great dream to have communism and equality, but it's just, the real world Darwinism. We're just going to have billionaires and classes. It's just how it is. That's the argument.
Yep.
No anti-communist uprising. The Soviet Union was not overthrown by foreign military intervention, nor was it brought down by an uprising of discontented workers. This happened with October 1917 revolution. In fact, 9 months before its dissolution, 77% of the people in the Soviet Union voted to maintain their country in a referendum taken as part of the March 1991 election. So in 1991, right before it was dissolved, 77% of the people in the Soviet Union wanted to keep the Soviet Union. So what happened? All right. That result did not interest the pro-capitalist quote unquote Democrats in the least. In December 1991, the leaders began the process that would see the USSR dissolved within the next year. It was leaders from within the summits of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union that led the offensive to destroy the Communist Party and dismantle the Soviet Union, taken out by the inside. This initiated the sale and looting of publicly owned factories, real estate, oil, gas, and mining enterprises, and collectively owned agricultural lands and farms, privatized everything that was publicly owned. The wealth of society, at least significant parts of it, was turned over to a new class of private capitalists who soon became notorious for the opulence, decadence, and theft. The legal social status of the working class was diminished, and the standards of living of almost all workers plummeted. The loss of factory jobs and access to medical care, coupled with the attendant social problems and demoralization, led to disastrous consequences. For example, March 11, 1998, article in the Journal of the American Medical Association reported a drop in life expectancy for Soviet males from 63.8 years in 1990 to 57.7 years in 1994. So the USSR falls, and 5 years later, people are living like 6 years younger or less, I guess.
Right.
So what's up? The population in Russia actually dropped by over 500,000 people in the first 8 months of 2000, the steepest drop ever during peacetime. Not great.
Yeah. And I just wanted to mention, obviously this is what created the oligarchs, and
Right.
the Russian oligarchs have been demonized in Western media for years, but it was literally the collapse of the Soviet Union, the quote unquote collapse.
Right.
Again, there was a lot of machinations going on. It was dissolved illegally.
Right.
But I just wanted to point out that, we were for this system, the selling off, the privatization of their public industries
Bringing
that created the
freedom
oligarchy
to Russia.
Yeah, that was the idea. And then, of course, down the line, we end up, all you hear is about, the Russian oligarchs, the Russian oligarchs, the Russian oligarchs. Well, that's what we advocated for at the time.
Right. Yeah. Next line. All the while, U.S. propaganda proclaimed that democracy and freedom had come at last to Russia. So that's the democracy and freedom?
Yeah.
Yeah. A revolution like no other, the Russian Revolution marked the first time in human history that the working classes, those without property, took the reins of power and held them. All previous revolutions in human history had transferred social and political power from one class of elite property owners to another, and that's what they call the bourgeois revolutions, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The Great French Revolution of 1789 to 93, for instance, had destroyed the power of the monarchy, feudal lords, landed nobility, and aristocracy. The working classes had been the vanguard fighters in that revolution, but that revolution led to the French bourgeoisie taking power. The feudal mechanisms of exploitation based on serfdom were uprooted and destroyed, but were replaced by a new system of exploitation based on wage labor or wage slavery, which, by the way, in America, after people were, abolitionists were getting rid of slavery, the next on the list was wage slavery. It wasn't that much better in their eyes. Fortunately, they failed on that. The October 1917 insurrection was altogether different from early revolutions. The social aims of the revolution, led by workers, poor farmers or peasants, were explicit about their class content. Early revolution masked their class character with broad slogans of freedom and equality for all, which is funny because now they use that as a derogatory thing. And when attacking communism, you want equality for everybody? All right. The Russian Revolution, by contrast, explicitly proclaimed that eliminating all exploitation of the laboring classes was its principal objective on the road to achieving a society without classes. So that's essentially the thing that makes it different from all other revolutions up until that point. Operating under the Marxist conception that society was divided into antagonistic classes driven by mutual and irreconcilable differences, the explicit goal of the revolution was to achieve the political and social supremacy of the working classes over their former exploiters. The banal slogan of liberty and justice for all was considered a mask concealing the true picture that the rich and privileged owners of private property had dominated society, which is what they sell us today. All right. how much longer is this shit? All right, it's not. A couple more pages. Revolution like no other. Wait, did I just do that part? Oh, workers' constitution. The victory of the Russian Revolution was based on the Soviets' workers' councils that were the basic fighting organizations of the Russian workers. After the revolution, the Soviets became the basic units of government. The first constitution adopted by the Congress of Soviets on July 10, 1918, set out the fundamental goal as suppressing all human exploitation, abolishing forever the division of society into classes, ruthlessly suppressing all exploiters, bringing about the socialist organization of society and the triumph of socialism in all countries. Sounds like a good starting point or a goal to work towards.
Yeah.
What do you know about the Soviets? So the Soviets, those are workers' councils, right?
Right. It's literally what the translation is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess, how I'm trying to think how that scaled up, but that's fundamentally what they scaled up into the Soviet Union, was these workers, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
bunch of workers getting together democratically to make decisions, and they just scaled that up.
Right. Well, basically,
a bunch of union of Soviets.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I mean, this is like one of the criticisms of like people like Noam Chomsky have, is that, you know, under Stalin, the workers' councils lost a lot of the autonomy that they had, right? And they were subordinate to the state bureaucracy. But yes, that's the idea.
Gotcha. Okay. None of the victorious revolutionary bourgeois governments from earlier epochs, I don't know what that word is, even in their most revolutionary phases, would have thought of declaring this fundamental goal in their constitutions, because they were bourgeois revolutions. As a first step toward the complete transfer of factories, works, shops, mines, railways, and other means of production and of transport to the ownership of the workers and peasants, Soviet Republic, and to ensure the supremacy of the laboring masses over the exploiters, the Congress ratifies the Soviet law on workers' control of industry, reads another key provision in the Constitution. So that was also in the Constitution. Mm-hmm. So in their Constitution, okay. Anticipating that the resistance of the overthrown exploiters would be greater following the revolution, and that they would be aided by imperialist governments of the world, the Constitution declared that in order to secure the supremacy of the laboring masses and to guard against any possibility of the restoration of the power of the exploiters, the Congress declares the arming of the laboring population. Sounds like a right to bear arms to me. Second Amendment, guys. Just want y'all to know there's a home for you over here. This clause might have seemed to be written by people with a crystal ball. Within months after the 1918 Constitution was adopted, the country was plunged into a bloody civil war, pitting class against class. 14 imperialist armies, including the United States, invaded Russia between 1918 and 1920. 3 million people died, and yet to the amazement of all, the new worker state survived the onslaught. So I thought that was pretty crazy, that 14 different imperialist countries, that was right after World War I, right?
Right, correct.
All tried to get a piece of Russia.
Yeah, I mean, technically, it wasn't even after. It was like kind of during. Yeah, World War I. But yeah, it's wild. And America was one of them. Brits,
so the UK, France, United States, Japan, Canada, Australia, India, Italy, Serbia, Romania, Poland, which I guess I'd flip by that point, Finland, Estonia, and Czechoslovakia and Poland kind of playing both sides. But yeah, all of those imperialist countries. So that's pretty wild.
Yes.
So, problems of socialist development. A huge part of the politicized and consciously communist working class of Russia died as volunteers fighting for the new social order. However, by the close of the Civil War, the cities were decimated by hunger and disease. The factories were without raw materials. The urban proletariat started to return to the countryside in search of food. The economy had contracted by nearly 90% compared to 1914 pre-World War I levels. In order to resume production, Lenin and the Russian communists retreated in 1921 and allowed the return of capitalism and capitalists, but under the supervision of the Soviet state. The new economic policy, is what it's called, was presented as an emergency step away from the communist goals to bend as to bend so as not to break. While it did stimulate production in both the countryside and the cities, it also led to repolarization of social classes, especially in the countryside. So that's we're talking about today too with the China thing. And again, these revolutions happen in poor, unindustrialized countries. In order to catch up to the imperialists who are trying to exploit them, they allowed some of that capital to come in, but under the strict supervision of the state. So essentially the state still owns everything.
Right.
You can make some profits off of, investing your capital in with us, but it's not going to be as much as you want. But if you want to make some. But anyways, it worked to help them catch up to the rest of the world. So that's
just a little bit, a small clarification. I mean, technically, the state doesn't own everything. I mean, it does allow for some privatization, but again, it means.
Are you talking about Russia now or China now? Or?
Both. I mean, this was the idea. We allow for some private industry to exist, but as you mentioned, like it's under
state supervision.
Yes, close state supervision, and the state maintains control of what Lenin referred to as the commanding heights of the economy. So strategic
like banking
sectors,
system and stuff like that. Okay.
Yeah, banking, telecommunications, stuff like that.
Gotcha. All right. It wasn't until 1928, when the economy was getting back on its feet, that the Soviet government resumed the push toward rapid socialization in the factories and the countryside. In spite of these difficulties, all amid severe economic sanctions and blockade by the imperialists, the Soviet Union grew into the second largest economy in the world. Old backward Russia entered the modern world using socialist methods of public ownership and central economic planning. It went from semi-feudalism in 1917 to a position where it launched the space age, putting the first spacecraft into orbit in 1957. In 40 years. So
remarkable.
The policy
it's really remarkable.
Seemed to work. Yeah.
I mean, you really have to. I think there's not enough of appreciation for that. We're talking about a country that was largely rural, agricultural, had very little development, especially when compared to the more industrialized, advanced economies in the West, and has a revolution, and just 30, 40 years later, is able to beat the United States to space. That's
even. Actually, is that what sparked JFK to say we're going to go to the moon first? Is that they beat us to space?
Probably.
It was.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was.
All right. The Soviet people were among the most educated and cultured in the world. They accomplished in decades what had taken centuries to achieve in capitalist Europe. For the most underdeveloped Soviet republics in Central Asia and the Caucasus, the rate of economic and social development was even greater than that of Russia. Although they still lagged behind, the Soviet Union's policies of prioritizing economic and social development in those regions were in effect the largest affirmative action program in history. I never thought of it like that. So I guess the Soviet Union prioritized Central Asia and the Caucasus as places to develop. And because of that, they did develop. And that's essentially what affirmative action is. But I don't know. So that was interesting.
Definitely.
In 1940, Hitler tried to reimpose capitalism in the Soviet Union by military force. 27 million Soviets died repelling and defeating fascism and liberating Eastern and Central Europe folk from the yoke of Nazi occupation. Those Antifa bastards. The Soviets never had a moment of reprieve following that awful carnage, and that devoured not only lives but the Soviet economic achievements of an entire post-revolutionary generation. Yeah, like people forget about that too. So as soon as they had the World War I, they had the revolution, World War I and shit was going on. Mm-hmm. They had those 14 imperialist countries trying to get some power, carve
Smother
up Russia up.
We have to smother the Bolshevik baby in its crib. That's what Churchill said.
Jesus Christ.
Churchill quote.
It sounds like Churchill. And then at the same time, or not at the same time, I don't know, 20 years later, after they're in the midst of developing towards the fucking sending a man to space, Hitler is like, we're really going to roll in here with some fascist shit. And the Soviets stopped them. And I think it was mentioned today, too, in that class that the Soviets were asked to join the war earlier, but because they were building up from like a semi-feudal society, they're like, give us a second. Let us build up some weapons and shit. And then they sacrificed 27 million people.
Wait, the Soviets were asked to join which war?
World War II, to fight the Nazis earlier.
Oh, no. No, I mean, the Soviets weren't asked to join by who?
I'm assuming fucking the Brits in Europe, whoever was already fighting the Nazis.
So what it was, my understanding is anyways, Stalin understood that Hitler was going to invade the Soviet Union. You know, I think in Mein Kampf, you know, Stalin was pretty explicit about his hate for communism, and he thought, like, obviously, like the Slavic people were inferior, etc. So I think what it was is actually that the Soviet Union actually was petitioning the West to do more to stop, you know, Hitler's rise and his expansion. And I think, you know, prior to the war, I think Poland was invaded first, but Hitler had actually done some, I forget what it was, but he had took some territory. It was clear that he was, you know, looking to, you know, what they called the German word was like Lebensraum. I might be saying that wrong, but basically the idea was like manifest destiny kind of type idea that the Germans need this land. It's theirs. It's to claim and what have you. Anyway, Stalin had understood this and was like, "Yo, can we get some help here?" And because basically the West was very dismissive, and this is what led to the Ribbentrop. I forget the name of the other guy.
Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact.
Yes, there it is. There you go. Thank you for looking that up. And this was essentially to buy time for the Soviet Union because they understood that they were going to be invaded. So they made a pact.
That's what I was thinking of. Okay.
Yeah. So they made a pact with the Hitler basically to buy them more time to industrialize and prepare for what they knew would be an inevitable invasion. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yes, that makes way more sense. Okay, and then the Soviets never had a moment of reprieve following. The Cold War with the United States, which began even before World War II had ended, required a massive diversion of funds from the civilian economy to the Soviet military. Despite these setbacks and nonstop drain on resources, the Soviet economy grew quickly using socialist methods. Yeah, just imagine what they would be able to do if they didn't have to fucking spend so much money on their military just to prepare for, you know, imperialists invading them, which they constantly do.
Right.
And as the U.S. got bigger and built its shit up, which, you know, this is the Cold War, they're like, well, shit, we're going to have to spend a lot of our resources on this. Imagine what else they could have done. So, behind Gorbachev's retreat, the eventual overthrow of the Soviet Union was not caused by economic catastrophe. The growth rate in the economy had indeed slowed by the late 70s, as it did America. The high-tech revolution that led to an across-the-board restructuring of the industrial societies in Western Europe and the United States did in fact highlight a structural problem unique to the Soviet economic system. The widespread transfer of the newest technologies in computers and electronics into industrial production in the Western capitalist powers allowed for a major contraction of the workforce. Millions of industrial workers in capitalist societies lost their jobs. In the Soviet Union, the job was a right and the government was not legally entitled to deprive workers of employment. A careful process of job training, relocation for all workers whose jobs had become redundant slowed the pace of the introduction of the new technologies. Neither Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan nor the captains of industry experienced these inhibitions. So essentially, because every worker was guaranteed a job, the state was less flexible, and I guess that means they were slower in their adoption of new technologies, whereas capitalists could adopt these technologies, lay people off, and who gives a shit? I'm pretty sure that's what that's saying, right?
Yeah, more or less, yeah.
The structural issues came on top of the enduring problem caused by the anti-communist economic blockade that prevented any transfer of the Soviet Union or to the Soviet Union of technology that was revolutionizing the means of production in the advanced capitalist societies. Gorbachev's economic reforms, known as perestroika, were intended to use market competition as a way to end or radically diminish the Soviet government's obligations to the working class. Market forces, rather than the enshrined legal rights of the working class, would determine employment patterns. Not great. The section of the Soviet bureaucracy represented by Gorbachev identified socialist property relations and the Soviet Union's isolation from the locomotive of the world economy as the central obstacles impeding the country from sharing in the fruits of the revolution and technology that was sweeping the world in the last quarter of the 20th century. So yeah, they were lagging. Gorbachev and the Soviet reformers were convinced that only by ending the Cold War and liquidating centralized economic planning would U.S. imperialism accept the Soviet Union's entry into a rapidly accelerating model of a global economy. So I get what he made the deal of. I guess we're just going to privatize our shit so we can. That seems more than the bend or break shit from earlier.
Yeah, I don't know too much about the perestroika era. Gorbachev gets a lot of hate on the left from Marxists and Marxist-Leninists. But yeah, essentially, it was they liberalized the economy way too fast.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I guess his argument would be we had to. But all right. Instead, the reforms set forces into motion inside and outside the Soviet Communist Party, who were completely bourgeois and pro-imperialist in their orientation. The pre-existing Soviet political system had driven them underground or into the Communist Party itself. This relatively narrow stratum, as it struggled to delegitimize and end Soviet power, did not promise the workers that they were about to loot their factories and society's wealth. Of course not. They carried out the destruction of the existing government instead with a promise of ending corruption and bureaucratic abuse and bringing an end to the Cold War, which in turn would allow the people to enjoy the fruits of the world economy. You too can have 20 cheeses. The 1917 Russian Revolution transformed private capitalist property into public property. So that's the Bolshevik Revolution. That raised the possibility for a transition to socialism, but it hardly settled the question. It is evident by the overthrow of the socialist government that classes and class struggle do not disappear, but take new forms during the post-capitalist period. Pro-capitalist propaganda paints the high point of the 20th century as the end of communism, quote unquote. Partisans of the working class and those who yearn for genuine equality will remember the Soviet Union not as the end of communism, but as its first grand real-life experiment. Its strengths and weaknesses will be assessed and incorporated by all future generations as invaluable lessons in the struggle to replace capitalist brutality, unemployment, and poverty with a rational system that organizes and distributes the bounty of the world economy to meet the needs of human beings. So it's, hopefully China is that now.
Hopefully.
I mean, they're doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, thus far, they're doing a great job.
I'm rocking with them. But yeah, that's it. That's the end of it. That's the whole article. That's all the thoughts.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Actually, you know what? Let me just drop in a little George Lucas in here real quick.
More Lucas.
We got Comrade Lucas wants to drop something real quick.
American politics has always been behind these films. People have read in from the very beginning. They read in the relationship between the US and the Soviet Union, Watergate. Now, in this episode, without quite being Michael Moore, it is very political. There are references to have we become what we feared. There are references to the State of the Republic. How intentional was that for you?
Well, the story, the political backstory was written 30 years ago. It was written during the Vietnam War and in the Richard Nixon era. I didn't want to do a movie about how people take over democracy. I wanted to figure out how democracies give themselves over to tyrants. And, like after the Roman Senate killed Caesar, why did they turn the whole thing over to his nephew? Here's an interesting thing about democracy is if you don't treat it well, if you don't do your job, especially if you're a representative in the Senate or the Parliament or whatever, the whole thing can go awry, because if you're always bickering and not agreeing on things and doing the people's work who elected you, a tyrant will come in and take over and do it for you, because the people want to get the job done. And they will tend to go where the person who's got the most leadership is.
I love the way he said the people's work. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, I mean, it kind of just sounded like he was describing a bourgeois revolution right there with the Caesar thing. And he's like, you got to be careful about democracies slipping into tyranny. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And to me, it sounds like he's saying that, when you have a revolution, you get a democracy, don't let it become a bourgeois revolution.
Right.
So, thanks, Comrade Lucas. But yeah, that's it, man. That's all I got. I said a lot. You got anything you want to
add? No, not really. I mean, that was a lot of information there. We know that the Soviet Union made a lot of advances. I want to be fair about what the Soviet Union was. It was a project, an experiment. We had a very poor country. Also, just to give a little history, even prior to, the 1918, whenever those 14 countries invaded the Russia, countries, yeah, right, or the Soviet Union. Like I said, it was already established by that time, or was in progress. Napoleon famously invaded the Soviet Union, so it wasn't, or Russia at the time. So it wasn't the first time that Russia had been invaded. And fun fact, the way that you probably heard like how Napoleon invaded Russia, and like the winter happened and they ended up losing and retreating. And that's why people say don't invade Russia in the winter or whatever, right? Yep. I didn't know this. I forget what I was reading or listening to, but basically Napoleon was invading, and like the Russians just retreated and like burned everything.
Yeah, like they burned their own like towns and shit. Yeah. So like when they would take over, they didn't have anything to sustain themselves. Yeah, right. So it's like they don't have new supplies or anything. They burn the shit down.
Yeah, they couldn't sustain the army.
Yep. Pretty good strategy.
Okay, right. But I think that's that shows you like the Russians are proud people. They've been through a lot.
Most definitely.
And what we're seeing today, obviously, with the war in Ukraine, is a sort of this ongoing war between like the West and Russia. Russia has always been a little bit an outsider of the West.
Can you understand why a country that's been invaded by imperialist countries so many times would see NATO on their doorstep and be like, this kind of seems familiar to me.
Right.
Yeah. Don't like this.
Right. Yeah. So I just think it's important to connect those dots, because obviously the Soviet Union was overthrown, illegally dissolved, however you want to characterize it. And the 90s was a very difficult period for them. As we went over, life expectancy dropped, alcoholism went up, prostitution, etc. Just about every metric you could use to measure a good society went in the wrong direction. Putin comes into power in 2000 or 2001, somewhere around there, and starts to kind of take control of the state again, right? And this is what leads to the friction between the West. Essentially, Putin he's not a socialist, all right? I don't want to get it confused, but he is a nationalist. He's a proud Russian, and he's proud of Russian history, and he wants Russia to be sovereign and have the ability to control its own destiny, right? For better or worse. So that's what's at the crux of what we're seeing right now. And I think it's important to understand that that the Soviet history is also part of that history, that trajectory for Russia. They were trying to reclaim or to claim their sovereignty from the West. And until we actually start to understand these countries on a different level, like these are not, we can't like characterize or create caricatures of these countries. Like we have to understand their histories to really appreciate like how these people feel and what they're thinking and what they feel is a threat to their well-being as well. Until we do that, we're going to continue to see that, like what we're seeing in Ukraine currently.
You almost got to zoom out and see the forest for the trees.
Absolutely. It's important.
Boom.
Got to know the history.
But yeah, that's good shit. Yeah, I don't even know what else to say. Venezuela, I feel like that's going to be the focus of my next week. I'm going to try to see where we're at with that. And maybe do a little Venezuelan history. We should probably do that. But yeah, any final thoughts?
No, that was good.
All right.
Good stuff.
All right, y'all. Peace, world. Peace, comrades.
To nonviolence in the middle
Later.
of the most violent society that history's ever created. I'm not committed to nonviolence in any way.
The Republican Party and the Democratic Party are beholden to the interests of monopoly capitalism in this country.
The capitalist European and North American powers have carved out and taken the timber, the flax, the hemp, the cocoa, the rum, the tin, the cotton, the iron, the rubber, the bauxite, the slaves, and the cheap labor. They have taken out of these countries. These countries are not underdeveloped, they're overexploited.
The liberals are, at times, allies. At times, they're unreliable allies. So I don't want to just whitewash them. You've got to proceed quite cautiously with liberals.
The man or woman who knows the least about communism is the man or woman who wants to know the least about communism. That is to say, snakes are my enemies. They come to bite me, and I don't even want to know what they look like.
What's happened in here for the last 4 years? Brutality, humiliation, our basic human rights taken away.